Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I clicked on the right button. All right, very good. Um, you know, I got to tell you, when I was a young boy, my brother and I would trade off washing and the dishes after the meal for a week, and then the other one would dry. And I have very many fond memories of turning on the Dodger game and before the game, listening to Ross do his Dodger talk. And we're going to be kind of doing a Dodger talk today. But, I went to Ross's wiki page, and you can read about all his accolades and everything he's accomplished in his career. But the thing that stood out to me the most and was reinforced when he called me before the meeting, his family. Ross told me his mother's birthday would have been today, and she would be, if she was with us, she would be 113 years old. And he's been married to his wife, Lynn, for 62 years. He has two sets of twins, boy-girl twins, which have produced 11 grandchildren. And I'll tell you this, the boys are winning by a score of 9-2. So that's all the announcing I'm going to do, and I'm going to turn it over to Ross. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Matt, very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you. I guess once you're a Rotarian, you're always a Rotarian, right?
Oh, yeah.
As long as you just say, hey, service above self is the important thing in Rotary. And I remember that. And those were great days. And my son and I were both there for a while. And then circumstances came up that I just had so much going on, I couldn't continue. But it's great to be back with you. And even though I see just a few of you, I'm going to assume there are others out there in the audience. I'm going to assume there's some males, that's MALES, that are out there. But male or female, I'm happy to be here. Matt has provided me with a list of questions that the members and Matt himself have sent in. And I will start on that list and just kind of treat it like a Q&A, question and answer session, because I like that best. I think I get more out of it that way. However, if something I say reminds you of a question, feel free to jump in and ask me. So let's just start out and we'll see what we have here first. Since so many of you are Dodger fans, I'm going to assume that you care about the Dodgers. And a lot of the questions for me today have to do with the Dodgers. So let's see what the first one is. Is Dave Roberts doing a good job, given the talent level of the team and his high payroll? I would say overall, yes. I say that for several reasons. I know Dave. He is a wonderful man, strong Christian, very likable. And when you look at the history of the Dodgers, going way back to Brooklyn and back into the 1890s, they have had 30 managers in that time. Dave Roberts today has the third winningest percentage of the 30. So that alone, I think, makes him a good manager. This year, he has been struck, his team has been struck by numerous injuries. It just goes on and on and on. I think they've had something like 10 or 12 or 14 pitchers. Pitchers have been hurt and can't pitch. Right now, they're without many of their starters, like Clayton Kershaw. And of course, they lost Dustin May for the year. They've lost a lot of people. And I think because of the injuries and the fact that he's had to make so many changes with pitchers, they're very fortunate, I think, to be on top in the West. The other part of that, though, to be honest, is the National League West is a weak division. The Dodgers, I think, have been in the playoffs was it 11 straight years, something like that. And they're always in there, and they're always going to be vying for the pennant and for the world championship. So I don't think they're in any trouble overall this year. They're 2.5 games ahead of the Giants today, but they're going to get some people back. They've got some new additions to the team. We'll see how that works out. There are people who will say Dave Roberts does some things that they don't like as fans. And one of them is the pitching. He very, very often will let a pitcher go 5 innings, and then he'll pull him out of the game, regardless of how he's pitching. He did that the other night with the rookie Emmett Sheehan. Sheehan had not allowed a run in 5 innings. He'd given up 2 hits, had 5 strikeouts. He was rolling along, had a 2-0 lead. And Dave took him out, brought in Ferguson. Ferguson gives up 2 runs immediately, ties the game. Now, there are those who say, wait a minute, Roberts is trying to save that pitcher's arm for later in the year. He doesn't want him to throw too many pitches, and that can also be a factor. The other factor that nobody seems to know for sure is this. Is Dave Roberts being told by the front office, here's what you do in this situation? In other words, he's not being allowed to have the real freedom to call the game or manage the game he wants to. He's being told by the front office that, hey, this is the way it's going to go, and do what we tell you. The other thing that I think is a little bit surprising for Dave Roberts is the fact that he will not bunt. I don't understand that because he was a good bunter. And it really comes out to me when they go to extra innings and they have that stupid rule where they start the 10th inning with a guy at second base and nobody out, and you're in a tie game. To me, and this would be what Lasorda and Socia and all the other managers I've been involved with would say. If you got a guy at second base, nobody out in a tie game, bunt him over to third. There's one out then. We got him at third base. And this year, what makes that even more important is of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball, who is number one in sacrifice flies? The Los Angeles Dodgers by plenty. They have between, I think, around 45 sacrifice flies this year. But Dave's always looking for the base hit to get him more than just the 1 run. And I think that they would have won some games if he played it the other way. But overall, I say, yeah, Dave Roberts does a good job. He tries hard, and he's got the players, if they're healthy, to where I think they can do okay. Okay, let's see what else we got. All right, let's keep it on the Dodgers for a minute. I did some research this week on this because I was interested. I'm interested because a lot of people complain about the prices at Dodger Stadium. And so I studied that. Let me say right off the bat, I want to invite all of you to join me on my 2 sports websites. If you have a pen or a pencil and a pad nearby, just write down Ross Porter Sports Facebook. And if you're not on Facebook, Ross Porter Sports YouTube. And we now have Mike Cooner is on with us today. He's my producer in Oregon City, Oregon. Mike started this website for me a little over 2 years ago. And today we have 5,300 followers on the website. So the Dodger fans are keeping up with it, and I'm keeping up with them. But they're the ones who come in and say, hey, Dave Roberts didn't do this right and didn't do that right. And why are they playing so-and-so at third base? Why are they doing this and that? Fans are fans, and they love to give their opinions. And that's the good thing about our website. We do not allow anybody to get profane or vile in any way. If they do, we ban them. We kick them out. And they have a great time talking to each other on Facebook. So I'd invite you to come aboard, join us, make your own comments. And those people also, and this has been a real shock to me over the years, they also can voluntarily place things on the website like photos and tickets and all those other things. And Mike has been the one who's really led them how to do that. but I wake up in the morning and turn on the website, and gosh, there are a couple of things on there that were not on there when I went to bed, and I didn't even know it. So that's one thing about it. But back to my story um, about the prices at Dodger Stadium. As I say, there are 30 teams in the major leagues, 15 in the National League, 15 in the American League. And in looking at it, the cost a family must take on if they go to Major League Baseball games, who do you think is number one among the 30 in the highest prices?
Is
How
it,
about
is
how
it
about
Dodgers?
how about the Los Angeles Dodgers? What does it take? What is the cost? What's the cost for a family of four to go to a Dodger home game? The average, $219. That includes $127 for the tickets, the food and drinks, $65. That's 4 hot dogs, 2 sodas, and 2 beers. And the parking is $27. So added up, you get $219. And they are number one by a small margin. Okay, let's look down the way at Orange County. What about the Angels? What does it cost a family of 4 to go to an Angel home game? $100. To me, that is a big disparity. 219 versus 100. And so you say, well, and people say this all the time, oh, I can't go to the Dodger games anymore. It's just too costly, too costly. Well, let me put it this way, folks. The Dodgers are going to play the Oakland A's tonight at the stadium. When the first 63 people go through the turnstiles, the Dodgers will have reached 2.5 million fans this year. That comes out to an average, and it's the best in baseball. The Dodgers average 48,000 fans a home game. So if the fans are so upset about this, why do they keep going to the games, and why do they keep spending that kind of money? I don't know. I guess it's a love of baseball, if you want to put it like that. But that kind of struck me that there's quite a difference in the two local teams. Okay. Next question. What do you think of the new rules in baseball? The ones that now provide bigger bases, a pitch clock, no shift, as they've had. They call it the ghost runner, an extra inning that I just talked about. And of course, the DH now is in both leagues. There's only one thing that stands out in my mind. I hate the ghost runner. I just don't think that's the way baseball should be played, that you put a guy at second base with nobody out in the 10th inning. The idea, I think they're twofold. The idea is to cut down on long games, and that way you're going to get a winner 10th, 11th inning, they think. I think the longest game this year has gone 13 innings, but they've been shorter, and the time has been really shaved off because of this. The pitch clock I like. I think it's good. I think get the ball, throw the ball. Quit getting batters to step out of the batter's box and adjust their gloves and wipe their perspiration off and all the little things that happen. Get back in there and take the pitch and let's get going. And the result was, and we saw it first of all in spring training this year, the average spring training game was like 3 hours and 10 minutes. They got that down to 2 hours and 35 minutes in the spring. And it's kept on in the regular season to where it's been about that way. You're getting a lot of 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 40-minute games. That's good because it just gets people out of there and they can go home and go to bed. The other thing is baseball executives feel that if you do it that way, you'll get more of the young people back in the game. They're not going to be bored, if they want to call it that, by sitting there for 3 hours and 10 minutes. That I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but that is what is happening right now. And I think overall, the game's in pretty good shape for that reason. Any questions up into there? All right, we'll continue on. Baseball is such a cerebral game. Who generally is the smartest player on the field? And what individual players had a reputation for having baseball smarts? Well, I feel that the guy on the field that's most in charge and knows what's going on is the catcher. The catcher not only has to call the pitches for the pitcher, but he's also got to be mindful of where the infielders and outfielders are set up, and he can move them. Also, when I look at it, when you look at the past histories of major league managers, the ex-catchers have done very, very well. And I can start naming them, but I won't. On the other hand, the former pitchers are not that successful when they become major league managers. I don't know if there's a tie-in or not, but when I think of baseball, and I could go on and on with names, but I think about people like Johnny Bench and Mike Scioscia and Roy Campanella and Yogi Berra. And then when you spread it out, you get Cal Ripken, you get Pete Rose, you get Pee Wee Reese, you get Don Sutton. I could go on and on about those who really know the game and are usually a step ahead of it. And that's what you need to do. If you're out on that field, you've got to be saying to yourself now, if the ball's hit to me, here's what I'm going to do first. And it makes all the difference when you get down to it. So I say the catchers are the smartest players on the field. And you'll also notice during games, the catchers are always looking into the dugout to get signs from the manager or the pitching coach as to what pitches they would like to see their pitcher throw. And I've had many, many pitchers tell me that in the course of an average game, they very rarely shook off the catcher. What the catcher put down as a signal, they went with, and they were successful doing it. All right. Why are the games becoming more expensive? Do higher salaries contribute? Yeah, yes, I would say they do. I'm just bewildered when I look at the signings of these major league players today. First of all, the average major league salary today is $5 million. And that might be for somebody who hit 220. Or that might be for a pitcher whose record is 3 wins and 9 losses. The money's there. And the shocking thing to me is the number of players now who are getting multi-year contracts with money after money after money. And I look at these guys that are getting 8-year contracts for $240 million. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, $30 million a year for this guy, and he's just a mediocre player. But that's what happened to baseball some years ago. They talked about free agency, which kind of changed the game because after a while, you can leave the team you're with and go to another team through free agency. But I think that more dangerous than that and more destructive for the game was what they call arbitration. Because in arbitration, you and your agent can go in when it's time to renew your contract and you meet across the table from your team's executives and lawyers and so on. And you say, okay, here's what I want, and here's how many years I want it, and the money, and so on. And when they come back and say, well, that's too much, and here's what we want to give you instead, then you or your agent says, no, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. Mr. Jones here. Mr. Jones hit 280 for you last year. He had 22 home runs. He had 95 RBIs. He was great defensively. He was a very, very solid shortstop. And let's compare Mr. Jones with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith just got a new contract the other day, and he hit 235 this year. He had 9 home runs. He had drove in 47 runs, and he made a bunch of errors. He's not nearly the player that my guy is. So if you're going to give him as much money as you gave him, you certainly have got to give my man more money than he's making. And then the arbitrator has to sit down and make a decision. And more times than not, he'll come back and say, Mr. Smith's agent was right. He should get more money. So all of a sudden, up it goes, and it spirals out of control. And suddenly you got guys making a lot more money than they are due to make. And I think in the long run, that has hurt the game. Okay. Do I have an opinion on Pete Rose and Pete Rose stereo users not being admitted to the Hall of Fame? Steroids, let me get the word right. Steroids. Should those guys be admitted to the Hall of Fame? Well, that's a tough one. I have kind of mixed emotions about it. I would say of all the baseball players that I ever sat and talked with over the years, either on pregame shows, postgame shows, and I did thousands of those interviews in 28 years. Between those guys and guys that I would sit in the dugout before a game and talk to, the one name that stands out as the most knowledgeable of all of them was Pete Rose. Pete Rose would sit there and we'd be talking, and he would say, "Hey, did you see that game in Seattle last night? Cleveland and Seattle?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't." "Well," he said, it was on at 1:00 in the morning, and I was watching it, and I can't understand why the Cleveland manager, with a guy at second base and nobody out in a tie game, didn't bunt that guy to third. And as a result, they didn't score, and they lost the game in the bottom half of the inning. To me, that was a very dumb move. And of course, Pete Rose went on to be a manager himself. So he was as bright as they come when it came to knowing the game and staying with it. But I would not put Pete in the Hall of Fame. And I will tell you why. Because 2 of his closest friends told me, confidentially, of course, 2 of his closest friends told me that when he managed the Reds, he bet against the Reds in games that a certain pitcher pitched. And to me, that is as bad as you can get it when you're betting against your own team and you're the manager. So for that reason alone, I wouldn't put him in. Another thing I think about Pete Rose, he was banned from baseball on August the 24th, 1989. I'll tell you why I know that date in a minute. But he was banned by then Commissioner Bargiamatti, who soon thereafter died. But they had all the data and all the facts on him. And I have always said that if Pete Rose had, in the first year of his suspension, come out and said publicly, "I want to apologize for what I did. I was guilty of that. I made a big mistake. I should not have done it, and I ask for your forgiveness. This is a forgiving country, and please keep that in mind, and I'm very sorry." I'm not sure that would have done it for him to get him where he wants to be in the Hall of Fame. But it certainly would have helped him, I think, in some ways. And here's a guy who had the most hits in baseball history, and you can go on and on about what he did. He deserves to be in there. But for the reason I just stated, I wouldn't vote for him. And the other thing about it is his teammates on the Reds, on the Phillies, they say they wouldn't vote for him either. The reason being that when you go into a major league clubhouse, on the door of the clubhouse, and you see it every day if you want to look at it when you go by, is a long set of rules. And the rules state anybody who bets on baseball is out of the game. We suspend you, you are out of the game. So he knew this, and he looked at it, and he still did it. And to these teammates of his, that was enough alone to keep him from going in. Now I'm going to switch gears. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are not in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds has, I think, 7 most valuable player awards in the National League. He's got the all-time single-season home run record with 73. He has the all-time career home run record total, 762 home runs. He was a steroid user. That's a negative. But I look at it this way, and let me just put Roger Clemens in the picture. Roger Clemens, I believe, has won 7 Cy Young Awards in the American League, most of anybody. And he's not there. Roger Clemens has the most victories of any pitcher in baseball history who is not in the Hall of Fame. He's won 342 games, and he's still not in the Hall of Fame because they say he was on steroids. But let me talk about Bonds and Clemens. The way I look at it is this way. Before the steroid era came up and these guys became guilty of that sin, they had terrific numbers. They already had great numbers. Bonds hitting, Clemens pitching. So do you penalize them all the way for what's happened now, or do you say, wait a minute, at one stage of their career, they were Hall of Fame worthy and they ought to be in there? And what happened after that? Well, it just happened. There are also people who say the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, should set up a separate area. And in that area, it says these are players who were in the steroid area who had numbers, and here they are, and they're in a special section, but they're not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's a cop-out or whether it would even work, but it's something I think that should be considered. Okay. I was asked, what is the single most exciting game you ever announced? Well, I'm going to go back to August 1989. One day, a few hours before Pete Rose got suspended for life, I was in Montreal with my wife, Lynn. We were concluding a road trip that had seen the Dodgers go to New York and Philadelphia earlier and then move on to Montreal. Then Scully did not go to Montreal because no games were being televised. They were all on radio. We'd had televised games in the other 2 cities. So Don Drysdale and I went to Montreal to do radio. The last game I did because Don, after game 2, he worked the first 2 with me. After game 2, Don's wife Annie went into labor. And he said to me, I got to get to the airport. I'll see you at home tomorrow night. So, all right, go. So we went. So Lynn and I go out to the ballpark, Olympic Stadium, Montreal. And then we walk in the press box, and off to my left are the French-speaking Montreal announcers. Off to my right are the Spanish-speaking Dodger announcers. I'm in the middle, the only, for that game, English-speaking announcer on hand to do the game. People have said to me, what would have happened if you'd gotten ill? I said, Lynn would have made her major league debut as an announcer. It didn't come to that. Lynn did have a book that she started to read, and as a result, the game went so long that I think she finished the book on the Lennon sisters, as I remember. Anyway, the game starts, and it's 0-0. 4 innings, 6 innings. About the 7th inning, Len writes me a note, says, can I get you a Coke? I wrote back, no, I wouldn't have time to go to the restroom and get back before the commercials were over. So we went on, 0-0, 9 innings, 0-0, 12 innings, 0-0, 15 innings. 16th inning, Montreal loads the bases, 1 out. Mike Fitzgerald from Long Beach hit a fly ball to right field. Mickey Hatcher caught it. Larry Walker was at third base for Montreal. He races home and scores what looks like the winning run. They're jumping up and down in the Expo dugout and on the field and everything. And then somebody in the Dodger dugout must have yelled, wait a minute, Larry Walker left third early. He didn't wait for the catch. He took off. So the Dodgers threw the ball to third base, and the umpire, Bob Davidson, at third base said, he's out. He left early. So on we go. Nothing. 17 innings, 18 innings, 19 innings, 20 innings, 21 innings, nothing to nothing. 21st inning, Rick Dempsey, who'd come in to catch for the Dodgers, took Mike Scioscia's place in about the ninth inning. He came in to bat in the 22nd inning, and on the mound was Dennis Martinez, who had been Dempsey's battery mate in Baltimore for many years. Martinez was a great pitcher for the Orioles, and Dempsey caught him for, 10 years maybe. So here's Dennis Martinez in relief facing Rick Dempsey. Dempsey in August, and it's August 23rd, he'd hit one home run all year. He got a pitch he could drive. He hit a low line drive that cleared the fence and left by maybe 1 foot. Home run. Dodgers lead 1-0. Montreal, last chance. Up they come. 2 out. Rex Hudler gets a base hit for Montreal. He's at first base. Now, John Wetteland's on the mound for the Dodgers. He's into his 6th inning of relief. Hudler decides he's going to steal second. He takes off. Dempsey guns the ball down to Griffin, the shortstop, who puts the tag on Rex Hudler. He's out. The game is over. The Dodgers have won the game 1-0. How long was the game? 6 hours and 14 minutes. They did a lot of checking. And I'm proud to say that still today, my 22-inning solo broadcast has been the longest in history for any major league announcer. And the strange thing was, when I got through, I didn't even have a sore throat. I don't know why, but we went immediately to the Montreal airport to fly home. And I think we had to stop in Kansas City for gasoline. But that was it. And it was on the way home that I turned the radio on in the plane, my little transistor, and heard that Pete Rose had been suspended right after that game. So that was one of the most exciting games that I've ever had, for certain. Let's see. Another time that was quite exciting was the first game of the 1988 World Series. That's when the Dodgers were playing the Oakland A's. The Dodgers that year were not expected to be that good. Many people picked them to be 4th place in the West Division. They win the division, but they have to face the New York Mets in the National League Championship Series. During the season, those teams had played 11 games against each other, and the Mets had won 10 of the 11. One got rained out, was never made up. So the Mets were heavy favorites going in to that series. And the Dodgers came back. They were down 2-1. And they were down in game 4 by 2 runs in the 9th inning, facing Doc Gooden. Doc Gooden, one of the great pitchers in the game at that time. He's working in like a 3-hitter, had a 4-2 lead. And John Shelby somehow drew a walk to start the 9th. Mike Scioscia came up, and Gary Carter called for a fastball. Gooden threw it, and Scioscia belted it over the right field fence to tie the game at 4. Dodgers went on and won that game in the 13th inning on a home run by Kirk Gibson. And I will say to this day that if Scioscia doesn't hit the home run, the Dodgers do not win the World Series. They're down 3-1. And when they go back home for game 6, after they win game 5 in New York, game 6, David Cohn of the Mets shut them out. So they would never have won that series. So to me, the most important homer of 1988 was not Kirk Gibson's in the World Series, was Mike Scioscia. in the league championship series. The night of the first game of the '88 World Series, my assignment was do the post-game interview. And so in the ninth inning, Oakland was ahead 4-3. And I left the booth, started downstairs, thinking to myself, I don't know who the guest is going to be because they're going to lose this game. So I get down there and I go in the clubhouse. I'll walk back to the training room, and seated on the table in the training room is Kirk Gibson. He has his shirt off, got his baseball pants on, got his socks on, and on the TV set right above him, Vin, who was doing the NBC national telecast with Joe Garagiola, suddenly said, Joe, I'll tell you one guy we won't see tonight. That's Kirk Gibson. His legs are both killing him. He can barely walk. And when Gibson heard that, he shouted, Mitch, Mitch, come here. Mitch Poole was the clubhouse attendant of the Dodgers. Mitch shows up, and Gibson says to him, you go tell Lasorda I can hit. So Mitch goes down to the dugout. He's gone in about 2 minutes. He comes back. He said, Tommy said to you to tell you to get dressed. But whatever you do, don't show yourself because he doesn't want Tony La Russa, the Oakland manager, to know you're available. So Gibby gets his shirt on, he puts his cleats on, he gets his hat on. He takes his little wiffle ball and put it on a tee outside the training room. Then there's a net up there, and they practice their swings, hitting the wiffle ball into the net. So he did that, I don't know, 8 or 10 swings. And then they leaned around the corner and said, Gibby, you can come out. Come on down. So I followed Gibson down the tunnel. And when he hit those steps and went up to where the fans could see him, you'll remember a lot of you, it was unbelievable, the crowd reaction. Here he was. And a side note to that, and very important, for 3 weeks before the World Series started, the Dodgers had what they call a super scout, and his name was Mel Didier. And Mel Didier watched every inning of every Oakland game, scouted them, took notes on what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. And so right before the game that night, he held a meeting with the hitters. And he said, okay, I want to go over some things with you. Well, one of the things he told them was this. He said, I'm going to devote this really part of it to the left-handed batters. If Dennis Eckersley comes in to pitch and the count goes to 3 balls and 2 strikes, and Mel had a Louisiana draw, he said, I tell you, boys, if he comes in there and it's 3-2, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to throw you a backdoor slider. All right. Who's pitching in the 9th inning? Dennis Eckersley. Gets the first 2 men out. The next man is Mike Davis. Mike Davis had a terrible year. He hit about 210. He was swinging at everything, missing everything, a real strikeout victim. So Eckersley had played with Davis in Oakland previously, and he realized that one year Mike hit 22 home runs. So his thought had to be, I'm not going to let this guy get one he can drive, might tie the game. So he pitched around him. I'll tell you, anybody was more likely to draw a walk than Mike Davis. But somehow Eckersley walked him, put him on first base. Now, Lasorda signals down to the end of the dugout, Gibson, get up there. And with Gibby, he marches up the steps to go to the plate. Meanwhile, I'm looking out over the right field bullpen, the A's bullpen, and all I can see are red brake lights of fans in their cars leaving the stadium. And I wonder how many of them have over the years told friends or family, yeah, I was there to see him hit the home run. Wrong. We had 4 kids, the 2 sets of twins that Matt told you about. All 4 of them worked at Dodger Stadium. One made nachos, one sold programs, one was a parking attendant, one was in marketing. That night, 3 of the 4 Porter children went home early. Gibson walks up to the plate. Now, what a lot of people forget, and it's very important, Mike Davis, during the pitches to Gibson in the early count, stole second base. He took a real chance. If the A's had thrown him out, the game would have been over. You would never have seen Kirk Gibson come to the plate. You had never seen him hit the home run that has been voted the #1 sports moment in Los Angeles sports history. He was safe at second. Now the Dodgers are hoping, okay, if Gibson will just get a single, we can get Davis home, tie the game, and maybe win it in extra innings. So Gibson goes up there. Strike one, ball one. Strike two, in a hole, 1-2. Next pitch, ball two. He fouls one off. Next pitch, high, ball three, 3-2. Gibson stepped in, and then something went through his mind, and he stepped out. He later said that at that moment, he remembered what Mel Didier had said in the pregame conference with the hitters. He stepped back into the batter's box. Dennis Eckersley threw the pitch. What do you think the pitch was? A backdoor slider. And if you'll recall, Gibson took what looks like a one-handed swing. And how in the world he had the power to hit it in the right field seats, I'll never know. Nobody will ever know. But that won the game for the Dodgers. It was the only at-bat Gibson had in that World Series. He could never come back for any more at-bats. And the Dodgers went on and shocked the A's, winning it in 5 games and winning it in Oakland. So that was a very historic moment. Okay. Next question. What is the most special moment of your long career? Okay. Good question. I'm going to say the special moment was when Vin Scully chose me to be the Dodgers' third announcer. The Dodgers talked to me earlier, and Fred Clare, their vice president and broadcasting director at the time, had tried to talk to me earlier, but I had interviews to do at a sportscaster luncheon, so I couldn't do it and couldn't talk to him. And finally, the day that Lasorda was named manager and Walt Alston retired, they had a luncheon when it was over, and I got my food and sat down next to Fred, who called me over. And Fred said, I've been trying to talk to you. Here's what I want to ask you. He said, Vin is going to make some deals with CBS and start doing some of their football, some of their golf, maybe some of their baseball. And we're going to need a third announcer. And he said, I just wanted to know if there was anybody that you would like to recommend. I took either 1 or 2 seconds. I said, yeah, me. He later told Lynn I had him set up. He was my choice all along. So he said to me, we've had 200 people apply for this job. We got to hear your audio tape. I said, Fred, I haven't done baseball in 20 years since I was at Oklahoma. Well, he said, we got to have it. Now, it's Wednesday. I have to leave on Sunday to do an NFL game in Buffalo, and I have to leave on Friday night on a red eye. There was no game on Thursday. And of course, Wednesday, we're into Wednesday, so we can't do it that night. So the only way we could do it was if I left the station, KNBC, after doing the 6 o'clock sports Friday night, went over to the stadium, took my tiny tape recorder. They sneaked me in the back of the press box, put me in a dark booth where nobody could see me, and let me audition. So that's what happened. And my idea when I got started was, okay, I'll do about a half an inning to warm up, and then I'll rewind the tape and do it for good. Well, I did a half an inning or so. I rewound it, and I played it. And I said, you know what? I might do better but I might do worse. This is very representative, I think, of what I can do. So I never did replay it again. I took what I had, I handed it to somebody who handed it to somebody else who handed it to Fred. I went out the back door. Nobody saw me. Went to the airport, flew to Buffalo. Fred said to me before I left, when you get back, give me a call Monday morning. I said, all right. Back I come on Monday, early Monday. I call him. He said, we like your tape. It's down to you and one other guy. What we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 audition tapes. We're going to send them out to Vin's house, let him listen to them, and I'll call you later in the day. So that's what happened. Hours went by, and he called, and he said, Vin likes your tape best because it's closer to what he and Jerry Doggett are doing, how they sound. He likes your style. Welcome aboard. And with that, I went to the Dodgers for 28 years. I say this, and I say this with a lot of emphasis. I was with Vin Scully for 28 years. To me, he was the most popular man, not only in LA, maybe in the state of California. One time, the chairman of one of the political parties in California asked him to lunch. And at the luncheon, he had told him that the party wanted him to run for governor of California. And Vin told me I knew within seconds I wasn't going to do it, but I wanted to be kind to the guy. So I said, give me 24 hours. So he did. And in 24 hours, he called him back and said, thank you so much for the honor of being asked to be the candidate, but I just like what I'm doing. I'm going to keep doing it. And then he said to me, what the guy didn't know was I belonged to the other party. But my point was this: 28 years with Vin Scully, as big an idol as he was for so many people, I never once saw him rude to anyone. And that said a lot about him. And he and Jerry Doggett and Don Drysdale, all of whom I work with, could not have been nicer to me. And we had some great years. You're asking here somebody, what's the most difficult part of your job? I would say being away from my family. I checked on it one time and started figuring it up. And of the 28 years I announced for the Dodgers, I was away from my family 9 years. And my wife, Lynn, was wonderful. She could not have been greater, giving me support. And she took care of these kids while I traveled and was gone. Did a marvelous job doing it. And one other question I have here: who is the most interesting person you ever met? And that's going to be Lynn Porter, because she's bright, she's beautiful, she's sharp. She knows a lot about a lot of subjects. She's been an absolute joy, the love of my life for 62 years after we had a blind date. Yeah, I have one more mention. I had a chance in 1977 and 1978 to do the World Series for 600 CBS radio stations. And I did the games in Yankee Stadium. Yankee announcer did them in Dodger Stadium. And I was on the air and called all 3 of Reggie Jackson's home runs in Game 6 of that 77 World Series. And Reggie told me later that, yes, he did cheat that one game when he threw his hip into the ball when the Dodgers had him trapped. He said, I got away with it. And it was a big play as far as that series was concerned. And the Yankees beat the Dodgers, but the Dodgers got back at them in 81 and won it all. I know I'm close to 1 o'clock, so I'm going to give it up, but it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I hope you got something out of it.